Hey gang, so in this last video we started to, well, we saw how to transform objects using data. But we also started to see we're getting these repeated lines of code, which is called code smell. We don't like that. Especially if we've got, say, 20 different balls. That's going to be really annoying. So what we can do instead of having these repeated lines of code is use loops. Loops are fundamental to code, and there's a lot of different shapes they can take. My favorite is to use arrays and array methods, which we will talk about in the next video. But in this video, I want to just show kind of the underpinnings of that way of working, and it's a way you'll see a lot, where we'll say for we'll create a variable named I, and we can start it anywhere we want, but we usually start it at 0. I less than exit number. We can set this exit number to, say, 10. And we'll say I++. So I++ is going to, every time through the loop, we're going to increment it by 1. And we can console.log I. And we'll just leave that stuff there, but you'll see here we get 0 through 9. So that's your basic loop. Now, there's another kind of cool way to write a loop, which is we can say recursive is going to be equal to a function that's going to call recursive. What? That's nuts. Now, I don't want to run this right now because, and if I hit save, it is going to run, and I'm going to be bummed because it's going to create something called a stack overflow because there is no exit condition. There's an exit condition here. There's an exit condition here of 10, so I'm going to make that using something called an if statement. I'll say if counter is greater than 9, less than 10, let's run recursive. And increment counter Actually, let's increment counter before we run recursive. And we'll create a counter variable. So now we'll console.log counter. And you'll see that's the same thing. Same as that for loop. Oh, wait. I'm not calling recursive, so I need to call recursive. I'll call it once. And we'll see I get that now, that recursive call. So this is a loop. This is a neat kind of way of writing a loop. Both those are valid ways to write loops. And it also introduces us to this interesting thing called a conditional. So we can see we have if this thing is true, then do this. And we can also have an else. Else finished. Finished is not, oh, whoops. Finished. So now we get 0 through 10 and then finished. And so let's see if counter is less than 10. So in this case, we want to do if counter is less than 9. We could also increment counter up here, and that way we would just get those 9 values. So that's loops. Those are loops in a nutshell, and you can see one way to write a loop is to make a recursive call to a function, where we're going to call the function inside of the function. But we need to always have this exit condition. Here again, we need to have that exit condition. If we don't specify that, then we get trouble. It won't even accept that. So this for loop is kind of helping us avoid that thing called a stack overflow by giving us some fail-safes. And but I should say, this for loop is the source of most of the bugs in code. For loops are very often used in code, but very often we don't get these things right. You know, like we'll try to access the value of an array that's not in the array. And I don't really want to go deep into that because we haven't even talked about arrays yet. But in the next video, I'm going to talk about arrays, and we're going to see how we can first use something like a for loop to manipulate an array. And then I'm going to show you some array methods.